Um, all right. So we've kind of covered all that. I thought that was pretty good. Maybe nobody cares about listening to us. So one of the things that study, I'd seen that many, many years ago, but I saw a recent one because I'd never seen one on this before. I'd always seen one on vision, right? Very business oriented. That's the kind of books I read and self improvement and all that other good stuff. But this idea of achieving our dream has been really on my mind for the last several years. And so I was looking into some studies on it. And the studies were showing that people were asked in the latter years of their lives if they had achieved their dream, and 97% said no. 97%. Now, is that just an age thing and you don't think you accomplished everything you should accomplish? Or is that a genuine thing? Like, hey, I had this dream and I thought I really wanted to do it, but I didn't.
I don't know. I feel like I would have to like look at the study and find out what was the parameters of what they asked, because
they were all entrepreneur / business folk. They were all very latter years, like 80s plus. And the concept was, did you achieve either your dream or your life goal? Do you feel that you did that? And 97% said no. I was a little bit taken aback by that, to be honest with you, because me in the younger self going, when I get there, what am I going to say, right? I want to be in the 3%, not the 97, if I can. And then the next step kind of was, how do we flip that number? Anytime I see numbers like that, the 80-20 rule, this whole 93, 97% deal, and 3%, like, how do you flip that? I don't want people to go down that road. There's that problem solving thing, right? I see a problem, how do we fix it? Do we sometimes make our dreams so big that they're not achievable, and thus we feel like failure?
I think that there's two. I mean, considering that study, entrepreneurially minded folks probably will never be satisfied. All right. Probably still saying, man, there's things that I could do, to get to reach that dream. But I think that really, whether or not it's too big, ultimately means that you have established your dream. Like, I think that maybe I think the issue with discovering that you not accomplished your dream or your life goal is, I'm not sure there's a lot of clarity around it. Is what I want to go after, so that you can objectively say I did or I did not. Otherwise,
so that was the crux of the study.
John's poking it, because that was going to be my answer. My answer was going to be like, well, how many kids dreamed of being an astronaut? Like, a lot of them. How many kids actually become an astronaut? Not very many. Are the people who didn't become an astronaut okay with the fact that they didn't become an astronaut? Most of them probably like, yeah, I'm fine with that. Like, yeah, that was my dream, but I didn't become an astronaut, and yeah, I'm okay with that. My life went a different direction. I'm happy with.
So you're hitting on where I was at with it. So the question really is, was that really their dream? Like, that's the question. And so John, I think, nailed it too with, I don't think people are actually clear on their dream, so they can't answer that question correctly.
So they have to go to whatever was in their head at some point, which was, I want to be a multimillionaire. And that was the last thing that they really thought was a dream. And then they're like, no, I didn't achieve that.
That's exactly where I went with it on this. So cool that just happened. And so back to the problem solving thing. Okay, so if that's what I believe actually happened, how do we fix it? How do we find clarity on our dreams? And so I'll start, because this has been a big challenge for my entire life. I'm a guy of faith, so there's this thing battling in me all the time. There's God's path for me and what he wants me to do. And then there's Jim Johnson going, hey, I want to achieve some things and do some things. And I want those two things to be aligned if I can. And I always question whether they are, right? I think a lot of people of Christian faith, or maybe any kind of spiritual faith, probably feel the same thing. Which is why I think we end up focusing on the wrong thing. We end up focusing on that end result thing that we're doing, which a lot of people would call our why, right? Instead of focusing internally on who. Like, who am I and what am I about? The level of impact I have in doing who I am, I don't think matters as much as we sometimes give it weight. I think doing what fulfills us based on who we are, I don't know if I'd have a whole lot of regrets. I'd have a lot of regrets before kind of getting to that point of self-discovery or whatever you want to call it. But since then, or since that time, yeah, I haven't always met every goal I've tried to get to and everything, but I don't feel like I've necessarily failed either.
Well, you don't regret who you are.
Yeah.
And so I think that's different than saying that I don't have a regret. Like I'm for the most part okay with Nathan. Like maybe that's 80-20. I don't know. But I don't really regret who I am. And I know that so much of how I've lived have brought me to being where I am. And I am grateful for being as developed as I am, also realizing I've got a long ways to go, but I'm grateful for being right here and right now and who I am. But I think that living in your lane thing is so huge. Like if you had I'm trying to think of an analogy, because that's always one of my ways. Like you've got a 5'10", 210 pound guy, and you're trying to make him a wide receiver, and he's just getting blasted out there because the corners are all over 6 foot and 20 pounds lighter and twice as fast, right? So not going to have a real good time as a wide receiver. You make that person a fullback or a running back, and now all of a sudden, like, who they really are, they're running in that lane much more successful. Now here's an interesting little spin on it. Even if that person that guy described would have remained as a wide receiver and the team won the Super Bowl, probably now gets a Super Bowl ring with everybody else, but probably still would have had more fun and enjoyed their life and enjoyed their contribution as a running back.
He knows too. I have experience with this person. He knows that he didn't play a role in the actual success of that team, or at least not the role that he had in his mind of playing. And so while he may have that ring, this happens to athletes all the time. They sit on the bench the whole entire time and they get a ring. I mean, do you feel the same as Jordan with a ring? Probably not, would be my guess. I would have probably used basketball as the analogy, 5'10" guy at the post, but that's just me. Moved into point guard now, we're great, right? You said something pretty important there. The loving ourselves part, and being comfortable with who we are. I think we get bombarded every single day with who the world thinks we need to be. We need to solve world hunger, or provide clean water, or be super involved in my church, or just any of these things, right? Like from big to small, that everybody else is saying that's the way you should be and that's what you need to do. And we don't we don't really want to do it. It's not who we are. Um, I can tend to press sometimes because I want to solve all the world's problems. But I've gotten much more comfortable with how about I just help work on the problems that I have some direct involvement with.
The ones that are right in front of you.
Yeah, I got plenty of those. Why am I trying to solve everybody else? How about just 2 people instead of a billion, or 7 billion, or whatever there is on the planet? I've gotten much more comfortable in that because that's the thing in front of me. And it fulfills me like, hey, if I can help one person, all good. How do we get there? Like we've talked about, like, the failures and that stuff, but is it just an experience thing? You just go through life and now you've dealt with enough crap that you start going now, and is that complacency? Is that settling? Is that like going, I guess I'm not going to solve those huge big things, so I'm going to step it back to this littler thing? I don't feel that way, but I think a lot of people might be there.
I think that a lot of us, I mean, the word that's coming to my head is impact, right? Just impact. And while I feel that some of us are called to feel called or led to impact at a huge level, and some of us are called or feel led to impact at a very small level. I think that and I was thinking about this while you're talking. I think we all feel a tug to create an impact somewhere. And so how do we make it happen? Like, I don't think there's a complacency, but the impact of how I can impacting one life, one person, one in this lifetime can have ripple effects for generations, right? I mean, the impact I make with what's right in front of me. And so but I think that ultimately it comes down to, do we have that pull to create impact? To have purpose here, to serve. I think that those are some questions that need to be answered. But then how do we do it? I think it kind of goes back to that role that we're talking about, that role that you play, your sweet spot, and how you help and how you serve, how you create impact is unique and special to you. And
what if I don't know my role? How do I figure that out?
You mean the role I play no matter where I am?
Yeah, like we have some inclination. We've been around for a little bit now, right? But you two are pretty different. You're like, my role has always been this. Nathan's like, I was that, and then I was this, and then I was that over there. Although I would challenge him on that and start to ask which one was the one that was your lane, right? Which one was the one you go, man, I like that. And you kind of talked about it a little bit with that consulting thing. You're like, hey, that's pretty cool. But you also have run in that lane, and you're still going, is there more?
Sure.
And so how do you get to this place where you go, yeah, I know what more is? Because I think we all go through these seasons in our life where I wonder if that's not going on with you a little bit. Gone through, gotten confidence, going good, things are great. It ain't done yet, though.
I think that there's phases, and so part of me thinks that, yeah, like, because you asked earlier, like, is that an age thing? I've definitely met people who are older than me that are down the road a little further, right? Who haven't figured it out, right? Like, and there's far too much nuance to make this simple. I think that there are people who haven't done very well at gaining wisdom as they got older, and they still battle and don't really look functionally much like a different person now than they did 15, 20 years ago. To me, that's that makes me sad. Like to see somebody who I'm like, this person's like 60 some odd years old. And honestly, like, I don't know where you started, but I don't know how much, there's not a whole lot of growth here. Like I know 30-year-olds that are more mature than you. Like, what's happened? That's sad to me. So, but at the same time, I think that there is a natural progression as people get older and begin to learn more about who they are and what they value, and then be able to let go of some regrets. Like people like, man, I could have gone pro. I could have gone pro. It's like at some point they go, I didn't, and I'm okay with it. Right. I look back and I look at being a little older now and seeing what pro athletes go through to be a pro athlete. It's a lot. And when you're 8 years old, you don't realize how much of your life you're going to give up to hit that. I think about Olympic athletes. It is their life. It is I look back and I go, man, I'm actually kind of glad I didn't have that drive, because I got to do a whole lot of stuff that if I'd have been an Olympic athlete, like I wouldn't have got to do that, because I'd have been spending my every waking moment on whatever that sport is. Right.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lack of drive. I just think it's a different drive.
So, right. I think it is a different thing. And so, but I think as you get older, I've always said that the key to growth is self-awareness. So if you can increase your self-awareness and then continually be able to know what's valuable to you, and like you, Jim, I'm a guy with some faith and some things that are outside of myself. And I believe that those things get put into you. And so discovering those things and then figuring out how to live in a way that you're consistently chasing after the things that were put inside you that are valuable to you, because I think that they are different for different people. And I think different people have different capacities. How many amazing, powerful human beings have lived and nobody knows their name? I submit to you, probably millions of amazing human beings have walked this planet, and we don't have books written about them. We don't have giant gravestones marking where they are. We don't have, a lot of history, but those people existed. And just because they existed and died and nobody knows that they existed doesn't mean that they didn't have an impact.
Yeah, two of the greatest people I know you don't have a book written about. One's my grandfather and one's my wife's uncle. Most impactful human beings on the face of the planet in my world, and on many others, but not that many, right? But down the line, generational, like Jon said earlier, who knows what impact they may have. And see, to me, that's enough. That example was set to me that was enough. And being cool with being enough, I think some people may associate that with complacency. I don't see it that way. It doesn't mean I quit working on getting better and growing and all that other stuff. But for right this second, I'm enough. And tomorrow I'll be just a little bit better, and that'll be enough. And the next day and the next day and the next day.
Well, what's the motivation, right?
What's that?
What's the motivation? That's another key thing to ask yourself. When somebody's like, I just have this drive to do this thing, that's okay. Is it all about you? Right? Because I think that, especially in our industry lately, like the legacy and impact have become this really like huge thing. And everybody's trying to talk about it all the time. And some people do a pretty good job of it and some people don't. But what I realize is that 2 generations from now, 1 generation from now, there's a really strong possibility nobody's going to know who Nathan Tebedo was. Right?
I'd argue that, but
I'm okay with it. How many think about the greatest person that you've ever met in your entire life, anybody of you that are listening. How many people know that person? And how many people will know their name in 2 generations? So then my question is not necessarily like, what are you going to leave behind? It's what are you doing now?
Exactly. What are you doing now?
If I helped as many people as I possibly could, and I died penniless because I dumped everything I had into others and nobody knows my name, I think that's a good death.
That's
Good life.
It's like almost a mic drop.
I don't want to do that. This is expensive.
Yeah. I think so many people, and just in a little bit of a, like, maybe cut it down to Reader's Digest. I think so many people fail to achieve their dreams because they don't have clarity on who they are and what they're doing, and being okay with who they are today. Always looking at, what am I going to do with this thing in the future? And as of today, I'm just trying to impact the listener who's listening to this. Might be one person, might be a couple hundred, who knows? But I hope it impacts one. Heard one thing that made a difference. I'm good with that. And if it doesn't make an impact at all, I'm actually good with that too. It gives me an opportunity to get better. Why can't that be enough? I think there's so much of, like, I got to do something amazing to be seen as enough. I'm reading this book right now. It's mind-boggling. I would have put it down by now, but it's about the Wisconsin Badgers, so I like the Badgers. But the book is called Intentional Mindset. I can't remember who gave it to me. Somebody suggested it. There are 10 components of this intentional mindset, and underneath each of the 10 components are 7 things that you got to do. And I'm like, that's 70 freaking things to have an intentional mindset. How about this? How about I just be quiet for 15 minutes a day and be intentional about my time and what I'm going to do that day? How about that? It can be that simple. We get so bombarded with what everybody's telling us to do and believing that that's the thing I'm supposed to do. I think Reggie Brock, our friend, kind of hit the nail on the head with that. We could stand to listen more internally than to be bombarded by information externally.
I think we're also, I think we're also being conditioned to say that there is no such thing as enough.
Who's the happiest person you know?
Gosh, probably my wife.
I've met your wife. She's an amazing person. And I would agree with you, man. She's like always in joy mode. You guys don't have big fancy house and fancy cars and airplanes and jetting off all over the country and all the other stuff. And she's happy as a clam all the time.
Yeah, she's always happy.
My 1-year-old.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome. Let's go with adult. Who's the happiest adult you know?
My mom.
Wow. And she has every excuse not to be.
Yeah. Health struggles going back quite a bit.
Yeah.
But man, oh man, just positivity.
That's why I think attitude gives you amplitude. Your attitude can affect everybody around you. And sometimes that can be enough. Don't get so caught up in the dreams that the world expects you to achieve. Connect with who you are and achieve a little bit more each day. Do we need a dream? Now I just opened this up to a longer conversation. We might have to break this into 2 parts. Do we need one?
I think it's good to have something to shoot for. I think it's good. I think it builds character. First of all, it helps just understanding what that thing is. I think is a road of self-discovery. Okay, just trying to figure out what it is you do want to try and get after, and then being able to apply yourself towards accomplishing a thing, I think builds character. And then failing to get there, probably the most amount of character. Is like that. I like success is a terrible teacher, right? So achieving it feels amazing. Not achieving it is an opportunity for growth. So I think we should have some dreams, and I think we should have some goals and some things that we press towards, but realize a couple of things. Number one, your identity is not wrapped up in them. You are not that thing, which means that if you don't achieve that thing, that you're now some sort of failure or loser. I don't think you should wrap your identity up in those, which is once again, I think we get preached and conditioned to wrap ourselves up, right? What's one of the first things you ask somebody? What do you do? And we know that they mean work. What if you ask somebody, who are you? Right? They'd be like,
I think that's a fantastic question. I would love to have that answered way more than what do you do?
I mean, I'd be more interested in the answer to that question, because honestly, like there's a lot of people that have jobs that aren't particularly glamorous. They're not real glamorous, you know? And so if you said, what do you do? And they go, this is going to be really boring. I'm whatever, fill in the blank, right? But that doesn't mean that they're not an interesting person, because it's not who they are. And so dreams, I think, are necessary. I think goals are necessary, and I think you should have them. But you got to watch out. You got to keep those guardrails around that thing. Number one, they are not your identity, number one. And number two, you're not necessarily always the number one force in whether or not they get accomplished. Sometimes things happen that aren't your fault, and you should allow that weight to come off of your shoulders. I mean, there are people right now that don't have a home, don't have a job, lost everything they had. They don't have any food because a tornado ripped through their town and shredded their home and the place that they work and their cars and everything. And that wasn't their fault. So those two guardrails, I think, should be in place. But in my opinion, I think goals and dreams are good, and they should be had.
I would agree. I interviewed a guy a few weeks ago, and he said something that really stuck with me. One of the people he was working to is like working for or working with or telling that he was going to start this business. I was like, how are you going to be any good at that? He said, because my want to is enough. It sounds so simple, right? Like, and I think you could just hear that and let it go past you in most cases, but it really hit me. And I think that's what the dream thing is all about, is your want to bad enough. What do you guys think? And here's a question. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. This ought to be interesting. First off, the question you asked, who are you? I kind of asked that question, and you guys may have noticed. I don't know. Have you ever heard me ask somebody, or have I asked you directly? I think I have for sure, at least with Jon. What trips your trigger? Because I think people will tell a little bit more about what they're interested in than what they do. But this idea of your want to being enough, you put that thing together, like when I kind of digested it afterwards, the want to, right? And then enough. It's not too much. It's not too little. It's just right. Little Goldilocks reference there. I thought that was pretty cool. I thought it was actually really insightful and I don't know if he intended it that way, but is that a good definition of achieving your dreams, that you got something out there and your want to is enough to do it?
I heard a guy say once, He said, my buddy told me that I want a 6-pack of abs. And he said, no, you don't.
Your diet's going to change and your exercise program.
If you wanted it, if you wanted it, you'd have it. You know,
you figure out what it takes. You might be like, maybe a 4-pack, or how about just one single ab? I'm good with it.
Do you realize how many 6-packs you're going to have to work off to get off down to one 6-pack?
So that being said, that the want to supersedes the distractions and obstacles to a certain degree, right?
Yeah, like I afterwards, I was thinking about that statement, and I'm in the middle of this whole 75 hard thing. For those of you that have not heard about that, you can go listen to Andy Frisella's episode 208, his podcast, and go learn all about it. But it's not a new thing. It's been out there for several years now, and I've always really kind of avoided it and not been about it, and I don't want to follow the crowd and all that other good stuff. And in all honesty, I knew I needed to do something. I got put on the spot with it on a podcast, so you guys can go watch that podcast if you want, with my physical therapist. And it was a whim to say yes, which I try not to make decisions like that. But once I decided to do it, my want to has been enough so far. I'm 52 and a half days in, and my want to is enough. So I dug into that. Like, okay, why is my want to enough? Why wasn't it a week ago? Why is it like I knew I needed to do it, but the want wasn't there? I didn't want it badly enough. And as I dug into it, there was a how I feel aspect of things to it, just generally, physically, mentally, the whole bit. There was an achievement aspect, which is part of my nature and who I am. I like competition. I like to do things like this. But really, the want to for me that made it enough was a combination of factors that all brought it to a head that I have a responsibility to be here as long as I can be here, because I got things to do. I have information and experience and hopefully a little bit of wisdom that I might be able to assist people with. I have a grandson that I want to have an impact on. I want to be a part of his life. I had a grandfather that was very good that way. I would like to be the same. And so when you pile up all those little things on top of each other, it needed that one little thing, that one more thing that says, okay, now my want to is enough. It wasn't before, now it is. You guys ever go through anything like that? Like you knew you needed to do something and you just didn't do it, and then all of a sudden you did?
Well, I just want to point out, we started this thing talking about failure. I've tried 75 hard now. What is it? Twice, and not made it through. There's sickness and things that are whatever excuse you want to use. But if Jim experienced what I had experienced, he would still be going. He would still be going, right? So I think that ultimately it comes down to, right? Like, can I say that I want to complete 75 hard right now? No, because I would have done it, right? I would have done what I needed to do. So I think
I got to throw in the other critical factors. I had a doctor's appointment, high blood pressure, all that. They were wanting to put me on medication and that kind of stuff. That was another little dipping point, but was it enough yet?
Yeah.
And I haven't really identified what the one was, other than maybe it was just my physical therapist being on that podcast and challenging me. Like, okay, big boy. Okay, now my want to is enough all of a sudden. If you're out there and you're listening to this and you don't feel like you're achieving your dream or getting to where you want to be, a couple of things. First off, you got to figure out who you are and dig into that get quiet, listen, and really dig into what is it that gives you joy when nothing else is going on. There's no financial reward. Nobody's going to feed your ego. Your pride's not going to be rewarded. You just like to do it, whatever that is. Then you got to figure out from there a bit of clarity on where you're headed. Like what with that knowledge, what can I accomplish with that? What can I do with that? And I got interviewed today for a book. I guess I'm going to have a chapter in a book. And this was kind of along that vein. And I used the example of somebody that liked baking cookies. Like if that's what they settled on, they like to bake cookies. Okay. Does that mean that you're going to be a cookie baker? Or do you have a YouTube channel about baking cookies? Or is it the cookies, or is it just baking and being creative and you want to bake a bunch of stuff? Or maybe you're going to have an online store. Or maybe you're going to have a silly YouTube channel about all your baking mistakes. There's a billion ways to take the thing that you're truly fulfilled by and turn it into something that can financially fulfill you too. John, you had your hand up there for a second.
Oh, I too love baking cookies.
You like baking cookies? My best friend's mom likes baking cookies. She's the evil enemy right now. No cookies for me. I'm 75 hard. So get clarity on who you are, what you're after, and if your want to's enough. I think the people that don't achieve their dreams, they haven't had the pile of wants to have enough of it. Having a grandson wasn't quite enough yet. Disappoints me to say that, but it wasn't, or I would have done it the day he was born. What does that pile look like?
It's a heck of a journey to go down. I mean, sometimes you figure out that the juice isn't necessarily worth the squeeze. We deal with this in coaching. Like, hey, Mr. Salesperson, you want to make 250, 300 grand a year? Okay, here's the roadmap. And then they go, yeah, maybe 150 is fine.
That seems terrible.
Right? And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes we don't know what we're asking for. I mean, sometimes we don't know. Somebody, I don't remember who I was talking to the other day, and we were talking about how difficult it is to, in a lot of cases, to make $500,000 a year. That's hard. That's really difficult. So people go, yeah, I want to make 500 grand a year. And you go, great, here's what you have to do to get there. And they go, maybe I don't want to do that. Right? I mean, I had this conversation not that long ago. Somebody who said that they wanted to build a certain size company, this $15, $20 million company, and they expect to have children in the next few years. And I said, well, do you want to see those children? Because building a $20 million company means you're not going to see those children very often, at least not for a while.
Going back to the regrets conversation, I did that with children, and I missed out on a lot of things. Sacrificed things that I don't know if having a company that size really made any difference. Yeah, we made great money, but I can't ever get that time. I can always go make money.
And you don't hate yourself, and your kids don't hate you, and it is what it is, right? But that concept where you look back and you go, I kind of wished I maybe went to a few more of Braden's games. Or I kind of wish that maybe I had spent a little more time with Annika when she was little itty bitty. Or I kind of wish that I had done this thing with Heather, or whatever it may be. You can look back and feel that, and that's okay. And it's okay to have that gravity, because you can communicate that to somebody else. when somebody else has got a couple little ones and they have these giant wild ambitions. There's nothing wrong with those giant and wild ambitions, but you need to realize there's a cost that's associated with pretty much everything. And so if you decide that you want to spend more time with your children, you probably never regret that, but it may come at a financial cost. Maybe your company doesn't get quite as big. Maybe you and the wife, maybe you don't make, $4 or $5 million a year. And so we're willing to spend that to spend the time with the kids, because it does work in reverse. We do want that thing. You may be sacrificing some time with your children. And so I'm not going to judge anybody, but I would say count that cost. When you sit down and you look at this thing and you go, what do I want and what's most important to me? And talk to people who walk that road. Because it's a tough thing to say, but if you have somebody who spent a lot of time with their kids, can you find one who goes, I kind of wished I hadn't?
Nope.
But how many people can you talk to where you go, who might say, I kind of wished I hadn't spent as much time at the office?
Yeah. So like I said, I had regrets about that, but I also have some comfort in the fact that I went, you know what? This isn't important enough to sacrifice time with my kids. And I realized it early enough. Thankfully. Man, a lot to unpack here. Great conversation, guys. We're into this I think we are going to break it into two. Any final statements, like for the folks out there, if they're trying to achieve their dream, any advice you want to offer them?
The only thing I want to make sure that everybody listening knows is, if you feel a pull that says, I'm not creating impact. I'm not living the dream. What am I here for? That you're made on purpose for a purpose. And just because you may not know what it is right now, it's okay. It's okay to not be okay. But it's not okay to stay there, right, Nathan? Not okay to stay that way. I loved what Nathan said earlier about, what did it take for him to ultimately discover the roles that he's played, and it was him being intentional about growth, about putting himself there, and the self-awareness to understand what I'm learning and what I can stand to learn even more. So don't think, can't be scared to go grow, but also understand that there could be a reason that you don't quite know what what that purpose is or what that dream is yet. So give yourself some grace. But yeah. But hey, for those of you out there that I think that kind of have a really good sense of who you are, how can you make as much impact with the people that are in your organization? I think you know how, and I think it starts with who you are and what really fulfills you when you feel like you're doing something you were built to do. It usually involves helping other people, and that's why you feel so great. And I would challenge you to seek that and seek how you can implement it more and more and more into your daily life. That's all I got.
How about you, Nathan?
I think I would have to say, you gotta know yourself. I think a lot of people screw up Shakespeare's quote and they misuse it. Shakespeare said, "Be true unto thyself," right? But the second half of that quote is so that you can be true to others. So it is not a statement about being selfish, and it's not a statement about doing what's good for you and being the best you and all of you. The whole point of that statement was so that you can be true to others. Because if you're lying to yourself or you're trying to fool yourself, you're going to lie and fool others as well. And so don't be afraid to do some of the hard work. And it's not always fun. Sometimes when you get in that quiet place like Reggie talks about as well on his podcast, Living Exposed. If you don't listen to it, shameless plug for Reggie's podcast, Living Exposed with Reggie Brock. Go listen to it. Don't be afraid to be in a quiet place and just deal with what comes at you. Don't use your phone, the TV, video. Don't use stuff to try and silence it. Let it come. That would be my thing. I would say just learn as much about who you are, like Jon said, who you are and who you're made to be, and then start trying to chase it. And here's the thing. Not one of us is a therapist, but if you're out there and you want to talk to somebody about this, feel free to hit us up. We're here for you. We'll have that conversation, and we'll listen. We'll ask questions, and we're here to help.
Yeah. None of us are therapists. None of us are trained. We're not here for that. But we can help people get some clarity. That's what we're good at. You use Shakespeare's quote, and I kind of have the flip side of that one. Christ was asked what the most important commandment was, and he said to love God, and the second is like it, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I think the key word in that sentence was as, because I think we can kind of go both ways with that. We can be very much about loving ourselves. We can be very much about loving others. And I think most of us focus on the loving the others thing and set aside ourselves to do that. And you can't sacrifice one over the other. They need balance. As much as you're serving and helping others, you need to serve and help yourself. And that's where that growth, mental toughness, physical activity, strength, nutrition, all that other good stuff. If we don't take care of ourselves, we compromise our ability to take care of others. I want to extend Nathan's offer out there. If you're listening to this and you want to go through a dream coaching session with us, we'll do it for free. It doesn't cost anything, and no expectations. You don't want to work, that's fine. You don't have to work with us. We want to help you. That's what we do here. Because it's a hard and it's a challenging thing. And sometimes you get there better by having somebody to bounce it off of, somebody to challenge you, somebody to go question you. And that questioning and challenging brings clarity. So that's what we're here for. Thank you guys for hanging out on this 2-part episode of Contractor Radio. I made that decision at about Mark 1:15 talking. That's why I love these conversations like this, though, because we kind of get to the point where it really starts to dig in. May not be the most interesting thing for everybody out there. I don't know, but I know it was valuable to me, and I want to thank the two of you for not agreeing with me on everything. I like that. Like, it helps to clarify what we're after, to see people's perspective on things. So thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm going to let you go and hang out for a couple minutes. I'll be right back with you. All right, everybody. That was Contractor Radio. I didn't exactly know where that was going to go for sure, and it did not go exactly where I was expecting, but I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it had an impact on you. I hope it caused you to pause for just a minute. Take some time. And this has been the best exercise I have ever done in my life. So if that holds any weight with you, it is worth your effort to do. And I'm going to give one more shameless plug to Reggie Brock and Live Exposed. It was his suggestion to go be quiet for 15 minutes. First off, it's a long time to be quiet. In the first 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to be distracted with all the millions of thoughts going in your head. Let that pass and then start to listen. Just listen for a minute and ask yourself a few questions. Am I being all that I can be? Am I being who I am? Am I impacting others in the way I want to? Am I achieving what my purpose and reason for being here is? I think those are great questions to ask and then shut your mouth, shut your brain, and just listen. Because if you listen, it might surprise you, it might challenge you, it might scare you, but it is what's inside of you, and it's in your heart, and it's what's tugging at you. And I think you should pull that string, grab hold of it, let it pull you forward. And it might surprise you that your want to is enough. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us here at Contractor Radio. If you need help getting control of your business so you can grow your business and achieve your personal and financial goals and freedom, that's what we do. And it's not all about how big you are. It's a little bit more about who you are. That's what we're wired to do. That's what we help with. Hope to see you. Go to ContractorCoachPRO.com and click on the assessment button. That'll give us a good idea of who you are and what your business is all about. And then we'll do that dream call with you. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you on our next episode of Contractor Radio.